June 24th, 2010, Wimbledon. A man collapses, not from injury, from time, 11 hours, 5 minutes, 3 days, one tennis match, 70 games to 68 in the final set alone. John Isner had just survived something no human being was designed to endure. But here's what nobody saw coming. That match, the one that nearly broke him, would become the reason tennis changed its rules forever. And it all started because a kid from North Carolina refused to follow the normal path. This is the story of the giant who played the longest game. John Isner wasn't supposed to become a professional athlete. Born in Greensboro, North Carolina, he was the youngest of 3 boys in a middle-class family. His parents, Robert and Karen, worked hard to provide. There were no tennis academies, no private coaches, no 4-hour training sessions every day. Isner practiced tennis maybe 3 times a week, 90 minutes at a time. His goal wasn't the ATP Tour. It was a college scholarship, something to ease the financial burden on his family. That's it. But by 22, after 4 years at the University of Georgia, something shifted. His body had filled out. His serve, a weapon born from sheer height, had become lethal, and at 6 feet 10 inches tall, he towered over everyone. By 2007, he turned professional. But here's the question that haunted his entire career. Can you build a legacy on one shot? Because John Isner did exactly that, and it almost destroyed him. Let's go back 2003, University of Georgia. While other teenagers were grinding at tennis academies in Florida, sacrificing childhood for rankings, Isner was studying speech communication and playing college tennis. He wasn't ranked, he wasn't famous, he was just a student. But in his freshman year, something happened that changed everything. A back injury, not career-ending, but painful enough to force him into physical therapy. Stretching routines, weight training, disciplines he'd never prioritized before. That injury became the foundation of his longevity. It taught him that his body, tall, heavy, slow to recover, required more maintenance than others. Most players his height burned out by 30. Isner would play at an elite level until 38. You ever notice how the body sometimes protects you by breaking you first? By 2007, Isner had done something almost no one does anymore. He graduated, 4 years, full degree, and only then did he turn pro at 22 years old. His coach at Georgia, Manny Diaz, had instilled something rare in him, belief without entitlement. Isner didn't think he was owed success. He thought he could earn it, but the tour didn't welcome him with open arms. He was too old, too tall, too slow. His movement was stiff, predictable. Analysts said he'd never crack the top 50. And for the first 2 years, they were almost right. He hovered around rank 100. He lost early rounds. He struggled against returners who could neutralize his serve. By 2009, doubt crept in. Had he wasted his time in college? Should he have turned pro at 18 like everyone else? But then, June 2010, Wimbledon. First round, a match that would change his life and the sport itself. Nicolas Mahut, a French qualifier, ranked 148th in the world. On paper, this was supposed to be routine. Isner was the favorite. The first 2 sets were normal, tight but normal. Then the 3rd set went to a tiebreak, then the 4th. By the 5th set, something strange was happening. Neither player could break serve. In tennis, there's no mercy rule, no time limit. You play until someone breaks. 10 games, 20 games, 30 games. The sun set. Play was suspended. They came back the next day. 40 games, 50 games. The electronic scoreboard broke. It wasn't designed to count that high. Hour 7, hour 8. Isner's legs were cramping. His mind was fracturing. Every point felt like the last one his body could give. But Mahut wouldn't break either. This wasn't tennis anymore. It was something else. A test of will, a war of attrition. Who could endure more pain? You ever wonder how much punishment the mind can absorb before it just shuts down? Hour 10. 60 games to 60. People in the crowd were crying, not from joy, from exhaustion, from witnessing something inhuman. And then, on the third day, at 70-68 in the fifth set, Isner hit an ace. Match point. 11 hours and 5 minutes. The longest match in the history of professional tennis. He'd won, but as he collapsed at the net, shaking Mahut's hand, something inside him had shattered. 2 days later, he had to play his next match. He lost in straight sets. He could barely move. The match that made him famous almost ended his career right there. His ankle ligaments were damaged. His body was wrecked. But worse than the physical damage, the mental scar, because now every long match felt like it could spiral into that nightmare again. But here's where Isner made a choice that separated him from everyone else. He didn't run from the pain. He leaned into it. In 2012, he hired a full-time travel team, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a strength coach. He invested in recovery technology, electrical stimulation devices that help damaged tissue heal faster, rebuilt mobility, accelerated what usually took months. Most tall players retired by 30 because their bodies couldn't take it. Isner played elite tennis until 38, 2018, Miami Open final. At 32 years old, Isner won his first and only Masters 1000 title. He became the oldest player to ever win a Masters 1000 for the first time. 3 months later, he reached the Wimbledon semi-final, the same tournament that had nearly destroyed him 8 years earlier. But he lost that semi-final to Kevin Anderson, another marathon, 6 hours, 36 minutes, the second longest match in Wimbledon history. 26 games to 24 in the final set. It was brutal, but Isner wasn't broken by it. Not yet, because something else was happening in his life that changed everything. December 2017. John Isner married Madison McKinley, a jewelry designer from Dallas. And for the first time in his career, tennis wasn't the only thing that mattered. Madison didn't just support his career, she gave him a life outside of it. She traveled with him when she could, sitting in player boxes, cheering through 5-set marathons. But more importantly, she stayed home when he was gone, building the family they both wanted. Hunter Grace was born in 2018, then John Hobbs in 2019. By 2021, they had 3 kids. And in 2023, their fourth, Chapel Lee, arrived. Isner later admitted that becoming a father did something unexpected. It made him care less about tennis. Not in a bad way, in a freeing way. The pressure lifted, the obsession faded. Losing a match didn't feel like losing himself anymore. His wife gave him permission to be human again, and strangely, that freedom made him better. After the birth of Hunter in 2018, he won Miami. After Hobbs was born in 2019, he reached another Wimbledon semi-final and won his second Masters 1000 doubles title. He wasn't playing to prove anything anymore. He was playing because he still loved it. Isn't it strange how sometimes the only way to win is to stop needing the victory so badly? But between 2019 and 2022, something else was happening. His body started sending messages he couldn't ignore. 2019, Miami Open final, against Roger Federer. Midway through the match, he felt something snap in his foot, a fracture. He finished the match anyway, lost in the final. Doctors told him 12 to 14 weeks recovery, using specialized nerve stimulation technology, the same devices that had kept him playing for years. He compressed the timeline. He was back in 10 weeks. But the cost was mounting. 2022 US Open, another fracture. This time, his left wrist, surgery, metal pins, months of rehab. He came back, again. But each return took more than the last. More pain, more doubt, more nights wondering if his body had anything left to give. The question wasn't, can I come back anymore? It was, should I? Then came April 2023. His fourth child, Chapel Lee, was born. And as Isner held his newborn son in the hospital, exhausted but overwhelmed with something deeper than any victory had ever given him, a thought crept in. He didn't want to leave anymore. Not for another tournament, not for another grueling training block, not for another year of sacrificing time he'd never get back. The fire that had burned for 17 years quietly went out. Not because he'd failed, because he'd found something that mattered more. By August, he'd made his decision. The US Open would be his last tournament. His last singles match came on August 31st, 2023, second round, against Michael Mo, a fellow American. It went 5 sets, and in the final set, fittingly, it came down to a tie-break, the very scoring format Wimbledon had introduced because of him. He lost 7 points to 5. The crowd rose to their feet, a standing ovation that lasted minutes. But Isner wasn't devastated. He was relieved. One day later, September 1st, he played his final match, doubles, alongside Jack Sock, his longtime friend and partner. When it ended, he walked off the court for the last time. 17 years, 16 singles titles, 14,270 aces, more than anyone in ATP history. Over $22 million in prize money, but more importantly, a wife who'd stood by him, 4 kids waiting at home, a life that existed beyond the baseline. When January 2024 arrived and the Australian Open began without him, Isner admitted he felt something unexpected: emptiness. He missed the competition, the adrenaline, the fight. For a few weeks, he even thought, maybe I shouldn't have retired. But then he'd hear his kids laughing in the next room. Hunter, now 6, Hobbs, 5, Mac, 3, Chapel, barely able to walk. And he'd remember, the longest battle wasn't the 11-hour match at Wimbledon. It was learning when to walk away. John Isner built a career on one weapon, a serve nobody could return. He played the longest match in tennis history, then the second longest. He forced the sport to rewrite its rules. But the real lesson wasn't about endurance. It was about knowing when enough is enough, because you can win every battle and still lose the war against time. Or you can choose to stop fighting and call that victory. If this story hit you in some way, if you understand how mental strength changes everything, then check the pinned comment. I left something there that might resonate. Here's the question I'll leave you with. If you knew you'd lose eventually, would you still fight? Or is there more courage in walking away? Today, John Isner is a father first. He co-hosts a podcast with fellow retired players. He runs a foundation supporting families with children in medical care, a tribute to his mother's battle with cancer. He even tried professional pickleball. The fight continues, just on different courts.